Hello, good morning, folks. Welcome. It's Friday, 15th of May. Still loving Fridays. The weekend is here. Quick look at the news today. Much more positivity, thankfully. Apparently, a new antibody test has been discovered. It's been hailed a game changer since it can tell with a pretty high level of certainty whether someone has previously had the virus or not. There are reports in various newspapers about it being almost, if not exactly, 100% accurate. So obviously, if that's true, then that would be of significant help for people to find out if they've had it or not. It would help people get back to work. It would help researchers get closer to finding vaccines. It would help track the spread of the virus much more effectively, and it would allow the government to ease lockdown restrictions faster. So loads of benefits to that. We'll wait and see how true this is. Supposedly these tests could be ready within a couple of weeks. Again, first for NHS staff, other key workers, and then for general public use. Time will tell on this one. There's also reports from several countries of trying to get public life restarted. So New Zealand has resumed a lot of normal activity now. Cafes, shops, cinemas reopening. Parts of Australia are now beginning to follow suit. We've got the football maybe starting, I think, in Germany within a few days. In England, the Premier League's been given a green light to resume in June by the governments. These are all sort of positive steps in the right direction. But as ever, the feeling is we're just kind of hoping and praying that this doesn't spark another wave of infection. Again, only time will tell. Certainly, though, people will be social distancing for a long time to come. In Northern Ireland, it seems that garden centres and recycling centres can open as early as Monday. So those green-fingered folks amongst us will be extremely pleased with this news. You'll be able to go out, maybe visit your local garden centre and buy a few things for your garden. So you've got that to look forward to after the weekend. And in thinking about post-lockdown life, this morning I just wanted to share a little bit from an often neglected book in the Old Testament. It's the story of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was an Israelite living in exile, and he had just found out that his hometown, his home city that he loved, was in absolute ruins. There was a small remnant of people who had survived, but their city was in pieces. The walls, the gates, the buildings reduced to rubble. And Nehemiah's response to this news in chapter 1 reveals something of his character. We read this from his own perspective. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. So clearly he loved his city. He was absolutely broken because his homeland was destroyed. His people were living in ruin and despair. But his first instinct was to bring it to God. He cried out to God and asked the Lord to intervene. And significantly, he would have asked the Lord to give him a vision for restoration, a vision of what it might look like as they begin to rebuild. And God answered his prayer. So in chapter 2 then, Nehemiah's story continues. He says, "So I went to Jerusalem. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. By night I went out through the valley gate toward the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down and its gates had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved on toward the Fountain Gate and the King's Pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through, so I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate." And you see, Nehemiah faces the reality of the situation head on. He spends time inspecting the damage, assessing what needed to be done, but all along he's formulating this vision for rebuilding. And the next thing he did, a very important step, he called people around him and shared the vision with them. So we read in verse 17, "I said to them, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins. Its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." So he knew he couldn't do this alone. He needed a team. He needed a community, a network of brothers and sisters to work alongside. And then we're simply told in verse 18, they began this good work. And what's the lesson here for us today, I wonder? Well, we too, like Nehemiah, ought to have a heart for our hometowns and our cities, our land. We ought to mourn and cry out to God to intervene throughout our nation and to give us his vision for restoration and rebuilding. What will our world look like when we come out of this lockdown? What will post-lockdown life be like? How are we going to rebuild societies and communities? How are we going to restart businesses and churches and schools? We need to be praying these kind of prayers, asking the Lord for his vision of what that should look like. And then we've got to share that vision with others. We've got to get alongside other people to do the work as a team. Together, we rebuild what was once destroyed. And one day, we will be able to begin this good work. For now, though, we look forward to that moment, trusting in God, looking to Him for a fresh vision for our towns and cities. Perhaps we're still in that period of mourning as Nehemiah was on his knees, broken before the Lord. Perhaps we're doing the same. We're crying out to God on behalf of those who are struggling and hurting and finding lockdown unbearable, those who are maybe on the front lines under enormous pressure, those living in fear. But remember, folks, one day lockdown will end. God will equip us with a vision of how to rebuild, and we will begin that good work. That's us for today. Remember, our live service will be on Sunday morning at 10:30. Link in the description box below. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. And as ever, God bless.